Hi, everyone. I'm Adrian. That's Vilip. That's Jay. We're from Audio Excellence, Canada. Thank you for watching this video. If you like it, please subscribe, turn on the notification, and share the video. Today, we're going to talk about a speaker from a brand that I find doesn't get enough respect. At least this is what I feel, and maybe we'll get into that a bit later. It's called Legacy Audio, and the speaker specifically that we're going to talk about is the Focus SE. So let me get into some of the objective details first. The SE basic finishes are $10,615 US or $14,330 Canadian. It's a 4-way, 6 drivers. There's a 1-inch AMT super tweeter, 1 4-inch AMT mid-range / tweeter, 2 7-inch mid-woofers, it looks like, and 2 12-inch subwoofers. Rated at 95 dB sensitivity. Frequency response is rated 18 to 30 kilohertz, 4 ohms, 55 inches high, 14 inches wide, and 15 inches deep, and a backbreaking 135 pounds each. A bit of background, the speakers are used by a lot of very, very well-known recording studios and producers. L.A. Reid is one. He's a multi-Grammy Award winner. And Rick Rubin, who is the producer of Adele, Johnny Cash, Mick Jagger, Aerosmith, I can't read today, Tom Petty, U2, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jay-Z, Shakira, among others.
And the Beastie Boys.
Oh, there you go. He's also been voted by Time Magazine as 100 most influential people in the world. So, Jay, why don't you start this time? Go ahead.
God, we need a script because I was going to start off with that. The studio.
Too bad.
So firstly, I really want to congratulate Legacy for being doing their social medias. So I'm on the social media platform all the time, and they post like nice pictures on Instagram, and I always see their products, and it makes my wallet cry. But like Adrian mentioned, they are becoming more and more familiar in the studios, and to me that says something. Now, we listened to it yesterday. We set it up, and the entire day we were listening to it, and we don't usually share opinions, but Vilip and I were saying, don't you find that this is more bass than what we were
there was a lot of bass
hearing before? So the story is that we had one of these pairs in just not too long ago before I joined the team, and when I listened to it at the time, I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away because the sheer amount of bass it had. As someone entering into the high-end audio, I was just like, holy crap, this has more bass than any of the speakers in the store, and so I was really blown away at the time. And
wait a second, Jay, were you blown away?
I was blown away.
Okay,
that's another 2 more words.
But
we're gonna add
I was actually blown away because the bass.
There's so much air.
There's so much air, and which we'll get into later. But so, and then
maybe we'll do a B-roll video of playing some like Muse or something like that, and your hair in front of the speakers.
But yeah. And we hooked it up yesterday, and I was thinking, wow, this is more bass than what I remember. And so
we actually turned it down.
Yeah. So there's a trim adjustment on the back for the treble and the bass. You can adjust it by 2 dB, and we turned both down. And the first thing I turned down was the bass. And
I remember you screaming at Jerry, "Turn that down! Turn that down!"
He was playing like rap music, and it was like shaking the entire foundation of the store. But yeah, the bass is going to be a lot. And not only is it a lot, the fact is that these are very well controlled, like a lot well controlled. What happened there?
Well, it just turned off because there's the standby
Okay.
function.
Well, like I was saying, there's going to be a lot of bass, but it's well controlled, and that surprises me a lot. Like when I usually hear a lot of bass, it's usually not a good sign because it's sometimes overpowering the treble or the mid frequencies. But to my surprise, it was a lot of bass, but it was very well controlled. I didn't find it to be floppy or sluggish or overpowering any of the other frequencies. So I was very impressed with that. And another thing with the bass is that because these are dynamic speakers, the cones actually move air, and so you actually feel the impact. And so especially in to steal Jerry's words, there was a track where we played that brought out the mid bass, and that mid bass is a lot more impactful than other speakers that he heard. And I agree with that. It is a lot more meatier, it has a bite to it. And
I should say Jerry's our resident Chinese Eminem.
Eminem, yes.
Yeah, he only listens to
rap.
To rap. That's all he does. And every day after he leaves, I have to bless the store just to get rid of all the evil spirits. If you don't know that that's a joke, we're in trouble now.
Oh my God, Jerry's gonna be watching this going like,
yes.
What?
Yeah.
What?
He was commenting because Jerry was in our Magnepan video, and one of the photos standing up to the Magnepans to see the height difference.
Yes.
And someone asked, how tall is Jerry? And Adrian commented 170 centimeters.
Yeah.
And
Isn't that right?
No, he looked at it, and yesterday he was infurious. He was like, what? I'm at least 178.
Really? Is that tall?
I don't know. So he was like, Jay, dude, can you do me a favor? Can you comment and tell him that I'm 8 centimeters? So I found
tough, Jerry.
But anyways, so I found the bass to be very tightly controlled, but I wouldn't find this speaker to be, a very warm sound either. To me, it's a little bit forward in the mid range and balancing out that bass action. So now once we get to the treble, despite the mid range being a bit more forward, I find the treble to be slightly more closed down than, let's say, the old ELAC speakers that we had with the EMT design.
Okay.
So with the ELACs I heard also the recent Vela versions, they're a little bit, they open up on the top end, and that may be not for everyone because it can get a tad bit bright in some cases, and for some people that's just not it. The legacies are slightly more closed down on the top end, so
especially after we turned it down -2.
Yeah, and I found that to be interesting, and because the mid range is forward sounding, at least to me, and so you may think that there's a lot of detail. But there is a lot of detail in the mid frequencies and high frequencies. It's just not a design like the ELACs where just it's open like on the top. It just feels like
do that again. Yes, hallelujah.
And so I found that to be very interesting. But overall, I was very impressed that everything was well balanced, and I think it just goes to prove that a good R&D design, years of improvement with their speakers is shining the light, because I saw a Facebook post the other day of someone posting a picture of the legacies, and it's like, I can DIY this. What do you mean this is like 16,000 Canadian dollars or something? And I was like, well, I mean, you could try to make this, but let me tell you, when I was carrying the legacies to set it up with Jerry, because you can't carry this by yourself. I guarantee, I don't care how strong you are.
It's just physically too big.
Unless you're like Arnold, like you're not carrying this. And so I was carrying it, and Jerry and I was like, you carry the woofer section, because the woofer section is always heavier. And we're carrying it, and Jerry's back cracked. And I was like, are you okay? And then my back cracked.
And Jerry's a big guy and he's strong.
Yeah.
Well, he's only 170 or 178 centimeters.
Well, to my defense, my back cracked after him. So
I did hear this. I was in the other room.
Exactly.
And I heard this kind of like.
So I mean,
are you okay now?
I'm stronger.
I'm
stronger because my back cracked later, right?
Oh.
We're raising a generation of snowflakes. That's what it is.
But no, these guys are seriously heavy, and so and like we can just imagine in the amount of research that went into this, because if it was just slapped in there, you have two 12-inch woofers, and what was the mid woofers?
7-inch.
7-inch, two of them, and then we have the super high frequency
There's a tweeter,
tweeter, and then we have the tweeter, and so that's a lot of drivers. And so if I've done DIY, so I know if I were to slap those speaker in there and do like a 5-way or whatever crossover design, it's not gonna sound right. It's just not. And so you could take years to build a speaker like the Legacies or even get close to it. But the Legacies at its current price, I think, is a very attractive.
There are diamonds in the 7-inch drivers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes, they chose that specifically for the sonic characteristics. They tried other precious gems, and only the diamond was sufficient.
Of course, it's always the diamond. Just take it out and
it's not studded with diamonds, but there's
but yeah, definitely I was very impressed because there's so many drivers, yet it's seamless across the frequencies. You don't hear individual drivers or anything like that. And I was very impressed. If I had to pick one, if there's one thing that you want to take away from this video, is that I was very damn impressed by the fact that the bass was just so much, but then wasn't overpowering anything. The trebles, the mid-range came out naturally. It was well balanced, despite the fact that it was so much authority in the bass region. So that's it for me. Oh, and it is ported in the back, but it has a lot of bass. We had it like how many foot from the back?
Well, we normally have our speakers very close to the back wall as per the Wilson procedure. And currently the AIDAs are resting there. So, and normally when we do set up the Focus SEs, they're like in the same position. Maybe Maggie's are like 5 feet out, 6 feet out, something like that. We just plunk them down. We don't actually take that much care and attention to placing them exactly.
They're not really that placement sensitive, but they are from the front wall or the back wall, as people would say it.
Front wall.
We had them quite far this time, and we had a lot of bass, and these are back ported. So, and in the smaller, medium-sized room we had before, where Jerry and I moved from, it was just overpowering the room. So, you need some space.
Did Jerry cry when we took them out of that room? Because
he
for him, he really liked the bass.
Even he was like, that's too much.
That's too
much. The funny thing is,
he's a bass head.
The funny thing is, did you put it in that room?
Yeah.
Oh, so he put it in that room, and I was listening to it, and I was thinking, okay, I remember like Legacies being a lot of bass, it may be too much for this room. So I was talking to Adrian, and Adrian's like, okay, go listen to it. If it's too much, then move it to the bigger room. And I went there, and I sat down, and I texted it. I played like 3 tracks, and I texted Adrian, yeah, it seems to be all right, right? And then I hear like little crackling noises, and so I went to the back, and it seems that like the thing was loose, right? The binding post.
The binding post.
So I tightened, and the bass region was loose. So I tightened it, and as I'm tightening it, the bass kicks in, and it's like a whole different. The 2 subwoofers, 12-inch subwoofers kick in. It's like.
Yeah, so in other words, your original connection, the woofers were not on.
No, it was.
The 12-inch woofers were barely on.
Barely on, yeah. So that's why there was the crackling. But once you really tighten it, it just kicks in, and it was just like, I was like, what the heck?
You're an idiot.
and then I texted Adrian again, going like, nope, it's not gonna work.
You couldn't have gotten up from your seat and walked like 20 feet to go to his office and say, hey.
No, I have to text him. I have to text him.
More than communications. Vilip?
Wow, that's quite an interesting
experience.
I'm glad you shared that with us. So it almost seems like I forget about Legacy Audio is in the store. We've had a number of different models, and we certainly sold quite a few of the Eris. That's my first experience with the Legacy Audio line. Because at the time I just started working here, and Adrian said, yeah, you sell this product. You learned this. He gave me a book, and he said, you got to figure out how to, run all this stuff. And the Aris uses a DSP module to equalize it for whatever room that it's in. And it can be quite complicated, especially the first version. And lo and behold, I actually sold the speaker. I was amazed that I actually was able to sell such an expensive speaker. And I went and did the install. And I really love that speaker, the Aris. It's even bigger than the Focus SE. But Adrian kept on saying to me, wow, so this speaker needs that much to make it work properly. And because we heard it without the processing and it was not listenable. And so Adrian says to me, well, there's another speaker that does all the same things, but without any of this module. And I'm going to bring one in and show it to you guys because we haven't had one in here for some time. And the speaker arrived and it did all these things that Adrian told me that it would do. And then, of course, we sold it. We brought another pair, we sold that, and finally this pair came. And in that time, I'd forgotten what it kind of sounded like because we have so much in the store that it's very easy to forget about something that you already know is good. Because you want to listen to what's new and want to see or you want to hear if something else is appreciably similar in the way it's able to portray music. And so when we decided to do a video about the Legacy Focus SE, I was quite happy that we would get this chance again. And I thought, yeah, it'll sound pretty good in that room. And of course, that's why we decided I decided to put it in the home theater room, which is a much smaller room than the main room. And so I was totally surprised that it was too bass heavy in that room. I never got to listen to it. I just responded to you the way you guys heard it. And I really wanted to hear it in that room, but by that point, we already moved it.
Trust me, the bass. So remembering, how much the bass Focus SE had, right? I looked in there and I thought, to my defense, I thought Jerry put it there. So I was trying to tease him. So
I know.
Which idiot put the speakers in this room? And then Jerry's like, Vilip. I'm like, oh.
So just as a preface, we ended up putting it in the like Jay stated, we put it in our main, the big room, the Macintosh room, the Macintosh Sonus faber room, and it's along the long wall, 5 feet, 6 feet out from the what would be the front wall, and just toe in so that you don't really see the sides.
Hitting the shoulders.
Yeah. I decided to use named Unity Star because it has Wi-Fi, and so you just basically power it up and you attach some speaker wires. We didn't really use super fancy speaker cables. Nordos Blue Heaven, which we have here, is one of our demo cables, and I'm playing it, and yeah, there's this tremendous amount of bass. So. And also way too much high frequency information for my liking now. And I never had noticed any of this before, but probably because I always probably used it with the attenuation on both the very bottom subwoofer part of it and at the very top of it with the super tweeter. So both of those had -2 dB attenuation, and it was suddenly everything locked in. It was really beautiful. There was a density to the sound, in a way, kind of like in the maybe 100 to 200 hertz region. Really, really, really pleasant, warm without being slow or bloomy or bloated or any of that stuff. It was pretty tight, but lots and lots of texture. And everything I threw at it, it just handled amazingly well. The name and the Legacy seemed to be very good, a very good match. It imaged in a way that was rock solid. There's no exaggeration in this speaker. It's so seamless, like Jay said. It's seamless from top to bottom. And you cannot tell where one driver starts, the other, stops, and when the other begins. And it's just totally, it's a really, 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 really good speaker in a way that you would just take for granted because you hear it and there's like no real weakness, which is not often the case with a speaker design. The weakness of this speaker essentially comes down to, well, do you want a 5-foot tower in your room? That's been the only complaint that whenever I've demoed this speaker, this is what people tell me. Well, it's a really big speaker. It is a really big speaker. I mean, it's not as big as the AIDA or maybe some of the vintage stuff, but for a modern speaker, it is a very big speaker. And the tweeter is essentially put at higher than ear level when you're sitting down. So the presentation is like, you know, you're at a concert, and when you're at a concert, if you're standing on the floor in front of the stage, usually the stage is elevated, and the performance and the stack, the speaker stacks are higher than you are, and so you feel like this scale that's unbelievable, and that's what this speaker does because the tweeter is mounted so high, which is quite different from almost anything else out on the marketplace, especially at this price range. Most speakers are much more modest in size, and they try to have the tweeter at ear level or close to it, and definitely with the Legacy is much higher.
Don't you find though that the presentation as a result, the singer is life size,
Yes,
it's got height,
Yeah.
and it gives you the sense of illusion that you're there, or that she's in your room or he's in your room?
So when I played my Yazoo track, Ode to Boy from Reconnected, it's one of my go-to tracks. It's the first track I normally play. I want to hear how much ambience a system is able to project. And with the Legacy Focus SE, you're like there. You're really like you're at the concert. You know, you're looking up, and Alison Moyet is singing, and you are just there. More so than lots of other speakers I've listened to. It has all the dynamic. There's this punch and slam, but you know, it's never bright or hard, but has tons and tons of detail.
So you have to imagine the singer.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then you have to imagine the stage, because if you don't imagine the stage,
that's right.
The singer's really tall.
But yeah, very life size, very natural, and
but I would say that in terms of imaging, I've heard better. So
we've all heard better.
Yeah. Well, with imaging, I wasn't entirely impressed. I mean, it did have, like you said, good imaging, but I've heard better with, you know, bookshelf speakers and even Wilson audio speakers. Even
you know, imaging
speakers.
On my list of things that are important is not like even in maybe it's a 5.
Yeah.
There's other things that are more important.
I'm just saying, of course, same as here, but I just think that's worth mentioning, so I'll just mention.
But there is imaging.
There is imaging.
Adrian, over to you.
So the first time I heard them, this was about 7 years ago, maybe. A friend of the stores, and in fact, one of the people that was responsible for getting me into opening up my own store. Indirectly, Brian became the rep for Legacy Audio in Canada, and he contacted me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Okay." So we ordered a bunch of things, and the Legacy Focus SEs came in. So the night that we had unpacked it, and 2 of my then employees, myself, and 2 other clients. So the 2 employees I had at the time were both semi-pro musicians. Both, interestingly enough, played drums. And then the 2 other musicians that came in, I think one was a guitarist, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. We closed at 8. We started listening at 6. We didn't leave till 10, and only because I had to kick everybody out. At no point did we even think about quote unquote audiophile characteristics. It just drew us into the music, and we went and played all sorts of music, one after another. It was such a joy. And then the next day, the magic was still there. So it wasn't just, you know, emotionally engaged because everybody else was, and you're feeding off each other's energy. It really drew us in. And earlier on, I had said Legacy was a company that, for some reason, I think doesn't seem to get the kind of respect that I believe it deserves. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure that I'm right. I could be wrong, because certainly Absolute Sound for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years has consistently given the Legacy and other speakers the Speaker of the Year, and internet magazines certainly like them very much, and there's a core group of fans that also enjoy the speakers. And yet, I rarely hear about the speakers from clients. If we don't bring them up, people don't ask for them, or people don't know about them. And that's a shame, because they are, the Focus in particular in this case, quite spectacular. They'll play virtually any kind of music you want, which is something that a lot of speakers cannot do. Some speakers will do certain music really well and do poorly on others. These will do virtually everything. They are full range in the real sense of the word. Goes really, really low, all the way up to the highs. Tremendously dynamic. They'll play at any volume that you can possibly want. And because they're so sensitive, they can also be driven by low power tube amps. I don't necessarily think that you might want to go with, say, an 8 watt tube amp, but the factory recommends, I think, 30 watts, and that's plenty.
They kick ass.
Yeah, so which means that you're not limited to the kind of music, and as proof, they're used in recording studios where sometimes they have to play at live music levels to check their balance and mastering.
So the kind of thing you have to understand with the speaker is that not only is it tremendously good dynamic sense, but it's also quite neutral, especially in the important mid-range area.
Yeah. I mean, the guys have already elucidated some of the things to be aware of, like the fact that it's got a lot of bass. I don't find the bass overwhelming. It's just a lot of it, and I think part of it is just maybe the recordings that we play sometimes have that kind of bass, and most speakers don't have the ability to produce that kind of bass, and so we're not used to it. And suddenly you have a speaker that is capable, and now you're hearing what the actual mix might have been. It's kind of hard to say, but be that as it may, I don't find it boomy. The caveats, as the guys have mentioned, these speakers do need a big room and solid construction. So one of the reasons why our theater room doesn't prove to be that great with full range, powerful speakers is that the construction is not that great due to city ordinances. Anyway, we've gone long enough. If you like this video, again, please subscribe and turn on notification, and comments, just leave them below, and we'll see you again next time. Again, we're the boys from Audio Excellence in Canada. Take care. Bye-bye.
Boys.